Thank you. I want to start us with the first question, and I want to understand from you, Lydia, working with the Hilton Foundation to support RLOs and locally led early childhood development. Can you tell us a bit, how are you supporting those specific organizations? What were the things that you have done in your organization to grant them access to this support?
Thank you. Maybe as a way of background, Hilton Foundation started its Refugees initiative in 2021. And part of putting that together involved a lot of wide consultations with people with lived experience, a lot of refugee leaders, local organizations, governments in the countries where I would like to work, and these put together key needs that refugees have. And one thing that stands out in the refugee strategy is really looking at a two-generation approach, where we are coming to ECD from a place of, yes, making sure children have good, healthy development outcomes, but parents are also able to access economic support that allows them to support their children. And so in doing that and thinking about the needs of young children, of course the refugee parents themselves and caregivers are better able to understand and know what needs their children have. And so we identified local organizations, and by local organizations in Hilton Foundation we are looking at refugee-led organizations, national and community-based organizations, but we're also looking at governments in those countries as local actors in a way, and the private sector local organizations. And how we really support them, one, is after they have identified the needs in pushing early childhood development and livelihoods forward, then we say we are able to give them larger grants, what I would call fairly large grants for them, whereby they're able to do some work but also grow. And in most cases, these grants also involve some operational costs, which in most cases refugee-led and local organizations don't easily get. So we fund salaries, we fund some of those costs that and overheads, but we also make sure that the whole process of them getting the grants is not ambiguous. It's very simple. It allows them to work from their place and be able to put together something with a lot of support from our team. And that's part of the reason the work that I've been supporting. I think what's clear with the grant bargain, we started at 25% to local organizations, and from the Global Refugee Forum last year, we increased it to 50% funding from Hilton Foundation going to local organizations. And that means a lot of things. One, it means that we have to do a lot of connections, because we also look at it as catalytic funding that allows them to access more funding from other partners. So for instance, we open up places for local organizations to be able to get US funding. We do for them the 501c. So we fund that. We make sure they have equivalence determination. And some of you know we do a lot of linkages, introducing them to other partners. But then the other thing that's critical is for most of our local organizations, they're already working with international INGOs, and we find that there are some giants in the field on some areas. So we have grants where we are linking the local organizations with the INGOs, but from a place of capacity building, a place of technical advisory. And in some cases, looking out for networks where local organizations already organize themselves and being able to support them to push that work forward. So for instance, things like advocacy are not very easy to get financing for. So but if we find a refugee-led organization network in Uganda, or an alliance where refugee-led organizations or local organizations are putting their work together, then we will fund that organization to be able to reach out to all these other smaller organizations. Thank you.
This seems like a lot of work. Can you just tell me, what was the process you took internally, if that's allowed? What was the process you took internally to achieve all of this? Facilitating easier grant making, facilitating core funding, facilitating simpler language, facilitating introducing them to other donors, etc. So what was the internal process for that?
Thank you. So it is a lot of work, actually. But I must start by saying that the Hilton Foundation Board is very committed to the localization agenda. And I think that's very critical. Because once the board is on board in terms of what you want to achieve with getting local organizations forward, understanding where you want to go with making sure there is organizations with lived experience are part of unlocking solutions for their own needs, then it becomes easier. But I think for Hilton, the process of understanding, first of all, what are the needs of local communities took some time. So we had this whole consultative process in the different countries, that's Uganda, Ethiopia, Ecuador, and Colombia, and that also meant hearing out from organizations that have already organized themselves. So in different countries, we have partners that have been working with Hilton before, like IRC, like BRAC, many of those organizations. And then internally, because we have set out in the strategy to ensure local organizations are being funded from the onset in trying to achieve the target, what kind of funding process, grant-making process do they have to go through? So realize that instead of putting together this whole big proposal development process, can we just have a very simple concept note that allows them to just be very clear on what their needs are, and once they have put that out, then we start the technical support. So in each of these countries, there's a local person like myself who is hand-holding the organizations, going further to understand. And you know, for funding organizations, you have things like the meal process, like the due diligence. So we have broken down most of that. So like the M&E framework that you put together on what are your outcomes, what are your outputs, what are your indicators, is very simple. And you have someone who like hand walks the partners through that. So it's a lot of different pieces together, but most important is to look at the aim, that the target we want is that we have more funding going to them. And so we have to break the red tape and so many other things to achieve that. Thank you.
Dr. Ghassan,
Yes.
how do you support local and national ECD solutions?
Yeah, I think one of the most important strategic orientations of the Arab Network is how to facilitate formation of national and local working groups and networks. And we have been doing that since 2018. Our first trial was a successful case study was in Jordan. And that was really a successful story. And what's important about this experience is that we are getting the multi-stakeholders together for the first time. That is, people from different NGOs, from different sectors, multidisciplinary, academia, experts, NGOs, all together to form the national or the local national NGO working group or network, or depends on the country. We have been doing that for something now. It is around 6 Arab countries who are already having this sort of ECD network, building on the experience that we had in Jordan. That now the Jordan working group is a completely independent, okay, and they have their own everything, even their own budget and fundraising and that sort of thing. Now, what's important about that is that the strategy of the regional network, these national networks will come together and build the regional network strategy. It's not something from the blues, okay? This is very important, I think. Okay, the next step will be, okay, what do we do with all this? Here comes the importance of regional activities together. Now, let's say, for instance, we need to have, especially in research, for instance, we have common research in 6 or 7 or 8 Arab countries, okay, and this research they work together on the subject, they work together on the tools, they work together on the data collection, and then we'll have national reports and regional reports and policy briefs. Okay. All this is being done through facilitation of the regional network to these national networks. You will have an example of that in the other session about the climate crisis that we did this one. So the last thing I want to say that is that we facilitate fundraising for these national networks to do core funding for things related to their work as they put it, and as they put their priorities and what to do. So it is an autonomous, we facilitate an autonomous formation of these national networks. Strategy, I think if you want to make it in very, very quick, strategy, implementation, advocacy communication, and fundraising.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ghassan.
For us, COHEA, we support local and refugee-led early childhood
Bring it closer.
development initiative in emergencies by strengthening the capacity of refugee-led organizations, but also local actors who work with children and families in emergency context. In 2019, we were implementing a social and emotional learning program in Kakuma, and this through this we were supporting RLOs to mentor parents and ensure that these parents are able they're acquiring capacity to engage their children within their communities. And this is because even some of the RLOs that we have here today were able to train these parents on social and emotional learning. And from the training, they were forming parenting groups. And these parenting groups, their role was to ensure they're able to engage these learners even during the after-school hours in activities that bring them into play, storytelling, and even songs, so that these learners are feeling again that sense of happiness within their families. And tomorrow when they go back to school, they feel good to concentrate on academic activities. And that helped us be able to now focus more on even giving grants to RLOs, to sub-grant RLOs, thanks to Poticas that even understood our idea and said, no, we feel like what you people are doing is important to the community, and we feel like it's good, we support you in the work that you're doing. And that support, they supported us to be able to sub-grant the RLOs that we've been working with. And these RLOs are really doing a tremendous work together with the parenting groups within the communities to ensure that they are supporting these learners even within their respective school and the centers. I would give an example of KVC, represented here by Matabishi. They are running after school sessions, and these sessions are mainly over ensuring they bring these learners during the after school hours to involve them into play activities within their centers, into other mentorship activities, so that at those times, those things that they're missing within their respective schools where they are learning in the mainstream education, they can catch up. And our role in this is to ensure we are able to mentor even the same RLOs, to share our expertise and experiences, to ensure that they are also able to keep mentoring the parents, and that these parenting groups are working towards engaging the learners, engaging the schools where these learners are learning from, and even engaging other community stakeholders on matters surrounding quality education of their children. I think for us, we've not ventured only into education alone, of course, but given the fact that we are talking about early childhood education here today, I'm feeling proud to mention how good that has been to the RLOs and even to ourselves as an organization, and how that is even a lesson to other organizations, other implementing partners in the sector, to also like reimagining their role, not only going into this work. Okay, of course, maybe I'll have time to talk about that as a recommendation, of course, maybe towards the end, if that will be possible, if I'll have enough time. But it's quite important that what we've been doing with the RLOs have given them enough power to even feel their responsibilities within their communities, and that the parents understand what's their role and the role that they are supposed to play when it comes to complementing to what the schools are doing, especially in early childhood education. Yeah.
Thank you, Cassie. Just a follow-up question quickly. With the funding and the grant funding that you're doing with RLOs, is it like, does it include both core funding and project funding, or only projects?
Our funding, we call it a transformational funding. We don't tell the RLOs what to do with the funds, and we only ask them to imagine the issues surrounding their communities, especially around early childhood education, and that what are the innovations that they are bringing in to ensure that they are able to address these challenges. And thus each RLO is able to come up with their own innovation and highlight the issues that are surrounding their community. And of course, you understand the area, Kakuma, is a multicultural, a diverse people with diverse cultural background, people coming from war-zone areas. Parents are traumatized to the extent they don't even have enough time to focus on their children's education. But RLOs are well placed again to understand all those issues. And that's why we don't go to RLOs and tell RLOs, this is what we've identified as an issue within the community. But what is it that you're seeing at your level as an RLO? And how do you feel we can be of help to you as an organization?
Awesome, this is really great. As a, refugee-led local organization that is now a big, kind of a bigger INGO working on mental health, how do you support locally led solutions for ECD and emergencies?
So, building on the amazing work of Cohere, AMNA was founded by an amazing person called Zalash Talamzai, who herself was a refugee. And the concept of Zalash and the early team was to really fill a gap that she needed personally with her family, but also in her humanitarian work over the years she recognized was really missing, which was the need to provide community mental health support for communities experiencing profound grief, loss, displacement due to conflict and violence, and who are still on the move. The mental health discipline talks about post-traumatic stress, but if you've experienced, living in war, having to leave your country and home, the kind of extent of losses that people experience, there's no post, you're still in it for a very long time, plus dealing with all of the uncertainties, hostilities, and traumatic experiences that happen along the way. So it was really founded to test and see whether you can create islands of safety in often otherwise unsafe environments, in refugee camps, in war zones, in shelters. So that's where it started, and that's very much at the heart of the work that we do today. It started in Greece, and all of our programs have been designed, from people with lived experience, which is most of our team, our leadership, our governance. Many of us, myself included, our families were refugees, not in this generation, in previous, and then co-created with the communities that we work with. So we do many things, and AMNA generally does, we work with the whole village, kind of age groups, and that's because it takes a village to raise a child. But we have a specific early childhood focused program called Beitna, which means our home in Arabic. And it's a play-based healing program, really based around working with the whole family, children and caregivers and siblings together, that really supports individual and community healing through creative healing practices that draw on cultural traditions that have existed from the beginning of time of humans all over the world, and now there's an increasing evidence base for. So how do you use rhythm and movement and music and storytelling, amongst many other things, to help people regain their inner sense of safety and trust, and do that through being part of a really caring community where there is solidarity, where there is activism, where the community has agency to kind of develop what is needed in that space, and where joy can also reawaken, where people can start to feel pleasure again, which is a huge casualty often of dealing with such profound harms. So we started as a direct delivery organization providing this support ourselves, and we wanted to find out whether we could meaningfully train and support other organizations to work in this way, because if we found out we could, we knew we would be able to have much greater impact. And so we tested our early childhood program with support from some of the partners and funders in this room, and we found that it really did work to kind of nurture local organizations. When we come to the challenges question, I'll talk about some of the challenges in that context with work with regard to refugee leadership. But now we are working with many partners, but in terms of our funded training program, we work with over 70 partners in different countries in the world, in war or kind of host countries, and a majority of those organizations are refugee-led organizations, which for us means either founded and led by somebody or a group of people who have been refugees or have lived experience of the context, or organizations that are really meaningfully committed to having their frontline teams be people with lived experience who are from the communities and understand the context.
Thank you. Before you give it to Stella, so I've been kind of like hearing kind of like there is like common, whether it's about funding, about access, about resource and capacity sharing, etc. But I want to ask you specifically, many of different INGOs want to do this work, but when you ask them, okay, why you haven't done it? They tell you, we don't know who to connect with. We don't have access to the RLOs or the LLOs. How do we know? So can I ask you, what is the internal process that AMNA did to reach those RLOs?
Thank you, Nour. So before answering that, I want to say one other thing, which is we started with a model, and we've learned that actually it's much more appropriate and respectful to have an approach. AMNA has something that we have understood as an offering that we can bring that's kind of built upon much lived experience and learning across, mental health, ECD, and from community needs. But we really recognize that the local communities are the experts in their context. And so people choose to work with us, it's not imposed, and then we offer something and we create communities of practice, and then our partners say, they decide how they're going to utilize it, and we provide the support and the community of practice, nurture each other and peer support each other, but we don't say it has to look like this and you have to do it our way. And I think that is really important when you're thinking about community, mental health or well-being programs. In terms of working with local organizations, I was reflecting on this as a question. It wasn't that complicated. We put a call out. For us, I remember when we first moved outside of Greece and kind of neighboring countries, and we were working with partners in Pakistan, which we'd never worked in before because there was a mass evacuation of Afghans living there and moving to there. And we just put out a call and we connected with some of our networks and we put it out there, and we just found that people responded. And obviously through getting better known and then working on how we build networks in countries, there's research and scoping about why we would go and work in a context. Within that process, we meet a whole range of people to understand, is this even needed here? Do we have a value add, or are we stepping on the toes of people? Is there already that kind of resource in the communities? And then organizations put themselves forward and they share the information amongst each other. We also work with 10 organizations at the same time to form a community of practice. So there's, more than one organization will have that, can join the journey.
Great, that's great. But do you have staff in those countries that you've partnered with people in?
No. So we have, in our team, we make sure, and we're increasing our capacity to do this. So a whole other story, but we've gone on a journey as an organization of how do we hire people with lived experience, with sometimes complicated visa situations, who speak the languages and are from the communities that we work with. Can speak about that separately. But we have a team that are in Palestine and Tunisia and India and like all sorts of different places, Venezuela, who are members of the communities that we work with, and they are the ones who will lead the programs. And so if we know we have the funding to go and work in a context, we'll hire in advance somebody with the expertise who's based there, who can do the coordination work, but we don't set up country offices.
Great, thank you. Okay, Stella, as our only local organization for early childhood development, can you tell us, about your journey from getting funding specifically through like UN, INGOs, to getting funding directly from foundations or other funders? How did that journey help you support local and refugee children in your context?
Yeah, thank you. Of course, that journey is not nice. I've been executive director for LABE for the last 14 years. But I've been in LABE for 25 years. So I started as a student, as an intern, and started growing through ladder. So before I assumed my position, we were receiving funding from UK and through an intermediary. And that was not a nice journey because we did not have the power to predict how much would be coming to our way, and therefore programming was very, very difficult. And again, we also did not have this exposure where you come here and you're able to interact with donors. You don't even know who is funding what. So until 2012, we were getting funding from Comic Relief and DFID by then, before it became DFCO. And we had an intermediary based in UK, whom I not mention here. So what happened, they went under. They were liquidated. And that meant that accessing funding was really becoming a problem. We were like orphaned because we depended on them. It's like our lives, our existence depended entirely on them. They were the wall. So beyond them, we could not know what is happening at the back. So report writing was basically by them. Would have an idea, then they would put it to a proposal and submit. Would not know how much has been approved. Would be told that maybe you're going to receive £200,000, but we don't know exactly how much were contracted, because the contract was between the donor and the intermediary, and for us we should have a grant agreement with our intermediary. But when they went under, then the donor came and contacted us. He said, LABE, you're doing a good job, but much as there is an ongoing proposal you have submitted, we won't be able to fund you unless you get another intermediary, because these ones have got under. So we had to look around. We had contacts with Mothers Union, Sumner House. We contacted them. They were skeptical, saying, no, we don't want to appear as if we are partner grabbing, so you have to look for another. And then I was also new in my position. Our founder had also retired, and of course he retired because he was also seeing funding NGOs was becoming a problem, and was like, I don't want to sink with this ship, let me leave you. And then we were just there. We were like about four people in our organization. But then we were like, no, we shall be able to stand and we'll be able to look for other donors. So we contacted another partner, and he said, it's okay. If it's okay, that if the others have been liquidated and you have evidence, we shall then walk with you this journey. So we presented them to Comic Relief, and then we had to go through another process of rewriting the proposal, changing the names, and and then we got the funding. Then later on, Comic Relief said, no, I think LABE has grown. We can fund you directly. We shall come and visit you and see what's on ground. So they came, they visited us. They told us, we want to go to the field and see what you're doing in the field. We said, we go. We went to the field. Unfortunately, midway, the car got stuck in the mud. So we spent like about 6 hours with the donor pushing the car. Then they were like, this is very hard to reach. So yeah, this is the environment we operate in. The roads are very bad, people are very far out to reach, and we're working in northern Uganda and Western Nile in rural communities. So we pushed the car, I was with them, we pushed the car, they took pictures, it was fun, but we were all mad. Eventually we got out of the mud. We continued, they visited us, they came, spent 2 days interacting with us, they talked to our donors, they visited our ministry, and they said, LABE, you are now a credible organization, you are ready to be funded directly from us. So they gave us 5 years, write a proposal for 5 years, which shall fund for 5 years. So we wrote the proposal, and then they invited us to UK to go and defend our proposal. I went with my head of programs. We visited. We spent 3 days, and we were facing a panel of about 6 people, and each and everyone is asking a question. We were like, we are brave. We are going to defend it. We read this proposal by ourselves. We know what we want to do. We know each and everything. We did not involve any person writing our proposal. So we are very confident, and we knew our proposal on our fingertips. So we defended, and at the end of the day, they congratulated us, says, you have won it. We are going to fund you directly from now. So that was our journey through since 2013. we've been getting money directly. And that also opened more doors for us to get funding from other donors, because now we've been able to work on our systems, we have strengthened our capacity, and because of increased funding, we are able to attract skilled people, M1E people, finance, and our systems are very transparent and strong, and that's why we've been able to attract more donors, including some donors in this house, and I'm sure they are impressed with what we are doing. That has been our journey in terms of coming from funding from intermediary to a present day where we are getting funding directly and managing it ourselves.
That is amazing, and I'm so, yeah, you're kind of like proving to all the skeptics around in the global humanitarian system what LLOs are able to achieve. And I just wanted to build on that. Many LLOs and RLOs actually say that they go through a lot of challenges when they get direct funding with kind of like major amounts of money. So I just wanted to understand, can you tell us what is the top challenge that LABE had when you had your first kind of direct big fund?
Yeah, the toughest challenge we had was, you know, when donors come to you, they always call out a due diligence, and there's a list of things that you have to fulfill. Now, our intermediary had not prepared us to tick the box. You must have this, you have that. You know, they hadn't prepared us so much. So one of the challenges we had was to make sure that we have everything streamlined, we have all the systems in place, all the policies in place, and to make sure that we are able to satisfy. We are lucky that some of the donors that came to us were generous enough and they were giving us room to grow. So that was the biggest challenge we had. Then another challenge was also, of course, now that capacity to satisfy a donor in terms of report writing, in terms of proposal writing. For us, what we knew was what we knew and could be able to do, but not exactly what most of the donors are expecting. So that's also capacity building we lacked at the beginning, but now we are superb. We've been able to build our capacity and we have grown.
That's amazing. I want to ask Cassie, what were the challenges that Cohere went through to achieve the transformational fund and to achieve the capacity strengthening for RLOs?
I think our challenges, the challenges that we went through, are not only our challenges, but they are also the challenges for the RLOs that we've been working with. And this includes lack of recognition of the informal refugee-led ECDE initiatives. And this means that even makes them not be able to access other sources of funding from even other donors and partners because they are not recognized. As you understand and you know the context in Kenya, not every donor would easily come and give you money when they're not sure of how you're going, what's your legal status, for example. Does the government know you? How would even accountability look like, for example, in this case? And to some extent, some would say, no, we can't give you our money because we are not sure whether you are going to stay even in this camp for longer. And if we run away with our money, what is going to happen? That's one of the challenges. And of course, when you go down and you want to share capacity with the RLOs that are not able to also access these fundings, and again, you are telling them that we want you people to keep pressing the gear, supporting your community, and addressing the challenges that your communities are facing, yet they are not able to access these funds because of lack of that recognition. It's been one of the biggest challenges that we've been facing. But again, on the same note, access to sustainable funding is also one of the other issues. Because and of course we are there as Cohere as an intermediary, and to some extent we might secure opportunities that we want to channel to RLOs. But these opportunities will be like donor driven, like the donor wants you to achieve 1, 2, 3, 4. for them, and this have to be achieved in this specific period of time. For example, a year, or even in some months. And you would want to know, this RLO comes back to you as Kohi and tells you, we wanted to keep running this project because we see the impact it's making in our community, but we have no more resources. How do we go about this? And now Kohi starts scratching the head. How do we go about this? How do we help you? And maybe sometime Kohi has not also secured some more funds to help you keep going with that. And we can only give you what we have. And again, that mutual collaboration and partnership does not also tell us that we have to stop interacting with you, supporting you because we don't have funds. But that's one of the biggest challenge. Access to sustainable funding is also a biggest challenge. But also sector perception of the capacity of RLOs to deliver services. It's been another challenge within the sector that even other implementing partners trusting you or donors trusting an RLO, that we are giving you this money, that we want you to channel to RLOs because they are not sure whether these RLOs have capacity to deliver. And of course, I'm happy that they were able to talk about what they have achieved, what they've been doing here on this stage. And that, again, and I can tell you, they will be, if not them only, they will be the best people who are able to even show what they've been doing and how that practically resulted into impact and even outcome. But still, the sector cannot still trust them. Yeah. And say, yes, these people can do and can manage. And Kohia stands in front of all these members and tell them, trust the RLOs. Yeah. You understand how that is a bit tricky, and we have to keep pushing the agenda. And of course, these organizations face a lot of challenges when it comes to ensuring they are able to run their projects, mobilizing their resources to ensure they are able to keep going as organization. And even capacity, of course, capacity to keep running, because again, us as other implementing partners would not be able to even tell them, and I think I talked about this here, that matching an experienced colleague where we are able to share experience. For example, Cassie is doing finance at Kohia. Do we have a person who is doing finance at, for example, should I say, for example, I have a colleague from LWF. Do we have a colleague from LWF who is doing the same and can be able to be approached by an RLO colleague who is doing the same so that they are able to share experience and all that? So these are some of the challenges that we've faced so far during our interaction with the RLOs and helping them shape their ideas and keep going.
Yeah, thank you, Cassie, for sharing. Dr. Ghassan, I want to ask you, what are the clear benefits that the Arab network has reaped from supporting national networks and supporting local and national ECDIE solutions?
I will start by harmonization of the understanding of ECD. That is, what is ECD? It was a question for many of the people who wanted to start working, is what is ECD? Is it the premature labor, something like premature babies? What is EC? So harmonizing the concept and the terminology, and this was very important. And you know, the Science of ECD course, that's the Red River College, and the Aga Khan University did and piloted the English version. We did the Arabic version, and we changed it to be a face-to-face for 1 week, for something like that. Now, this was a capacity building course. We used it to be a harmonization course. That is, let's get all the stakeholders in one place. We did that in Jordan and in Egypt and in Lebanon. Let's get these people who are going to be the national working group or network and harmonize. Tell them, what is ECD? What does this mean? And I think this challenge or this benefit, you can replicate it anywhere. replicate it anywhere. The other thing, oh my God.
It's okay.
Okay. The other thing is getting the holistic integrated approach to ECD as a continuum. That is, the ECD sector is very very well known to its sectoral approach. Educators alone, medical alone, caregivers alone, something like that. Now, this holistic integrated approach, this is one of the benefits that we have seen that when dealing with the national and local places. Justful partnerships, this is important. Networking and ownerships, again, and a broader impact, I think these are benefits that you will not see except when you deal on these basics. I need to involve again, also one thing. In different countries, there is the problem of government's involvement in ECD. The child as a unit is divided. So health is with the Ministry of Health, that's 0 to 3. 3 to 5 is with the the Ministry of Social Affairs, and then the Ministry of Education. It's very difficult to get these ministers together to work on a holistic integrated approach to early childhood. Okay, this was one benefit that over years in Lebanon, it took us something like 10 years to get the ministries to come together and work together on a national ECD strategy supported by RRC. That was this year, after 15 years of work together. Last, I think, the funding. And this is important. This is a challenge, and we need to look at how to deal with it. Funding itself is a problem. Then we have the sustainable funding, another problem. And the third is the funding competition. And this is one idea or one item that it need to be put on the table of the international NGOs. How they are dealing with that and how they are aggravating that. We need to look to these issues and seriously, I think. Yeah, well, this is what I have.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Ghassan. Lydia, I want to understand from a foundation point of view, what were the benefits specifically that Hilton reaped from supporting RLOs directly? Can we have the microphone? Yeah.
Thank you, Nour. I think there are a lot of benefits. Of course, this is a journey that we are walking. But one of the critical things I think that stands out in the Hilton Foundation Refugee Strategy is bringing local voices to inform and unlock solutions for ECD in emergencies. And with the funding that's going to refugee-led organizations and local organizations and even governments, you can see that there's a lot of more meaningful participation. And that's a benefit because it's critical to pushing and advancing outcomes for young children, for refugee families and host communities. So I think first of all, we are starting to see that there is a seat at the table for local organizations, for refugee-led organizations. We have processes, for instance, in Uganda, where before you would not have like refugee-led organizations taking part. But right now, for instance, we are doing our ECD multi-sectoral strategy, and we have specific consultations with refugee-led organizations, with other local organizations, and we are starting to see that there is a network of actors being weaved together to build a collective agenda for early childhood development. And I think that's like a key benefit for us, because at the end of the day, this should come down to more children and more families being healthy, children developing, but also families being able to be self-reliant. And I think the other key thing, which I think comes from the strategy also and how we are doing things, is that for most of the grants that we have with local organizations and even for refugee-led organizations, we have a learning partner attached to each of those grants. So we know that, for instance, we are funding LABE, but we know that there's a partner that's kind of working with LABE on what are you learning and how does that inform practice. From your side, in a contextualized way as a local organization delivering services for refugee families, how is that looking? How does that unlock more solutions? How does that support the entire ECD ecosystem? And then the other key thing is that for most refugee-led organizations, for instance, in Uganda and some in Ethiopia, is that most of them were doing a lot of work around livelihoods. So you find a lot of trainings, vocational trainings, maybe they're doing urban farming, like different livelihoods components. And because we are implementing a two-generation model, we are now seeing that they are also looking at how does supporting these families economically impact outcomes for young children. And I think that's critical, building knowledge there, but also we are seeing a benefit of enlarging the actors, the system actors within that space. And I think that's very critical because for ECD many times you'll find the same, it's very key that in every ECD meeting you find the same voices, the same faces. And many times we are preaching to the choir. What I see happening in Uganda, for instance, right now, if you called an ECD meeting, you're going to find people that are doing livelihoods. For instance, we are funding banks. I mean, we've been having the talk around innovative financing. We have grants with Equity, with Finca, with Opportunity Bank, with OCA, Open Capital Advisors, to say, how can you do ECD? What kind of solutions would you unlock? What would it look like? And so you find that the space is enlarging, but also by doing that, there is more lived experience informing the nature of decisions being taken and the way that we are working. But also, lastly, maybe is the government. Hilton has taken, I don't want to really say risk, but risk in quotes. We are directly funding government. And when we're making that decision, at first it was a place of everyone asking, why would you be funding government directly? I mean, just flowing back to the conversation we had this morning. But we have seen that if you have grants with local organizations and refugee-led organizations and of course INGOs, and you also have government being funded to do coordination, being funded to make sure this work is informing policy. It kind of helps, first of all, the local organizations feel like they're informing policy and so their voice is mattering, but also it helps government to understand that these partners understand what the needs of children and families are, and therefore that's helping us to build the system in a way, strengthen the system. There are things that are critical, for instance, in Uganda, like, Camila and Leah would speak to the learning through play. Learning through play is a big agenda, and this is what we want our children to learn. But we've just had our ECCE policy approved. Before, you would just find maybe the INGO speaking to learning through play. Right now, we have local organizations and refugee-led organizations just explaining the importance of that, but being able to do it right from the ground. And I think that all these benefits really, really matter, because at the end of the day, we are able to impact families. And then lastly, I think one of the things we are seeing is to be able to show this example to other funding organizations. I didn't get time to speak about the challenges, but one of the challenges that as we start to interact with refugee-led and local organizations is the funding challenge. So many times they do not have funding. Or where you have two partners funding one organization in that context. But now we see that there are lots of donors, even in this room, that are very interested in understanding how this is working, how do you do it, how can we learn from you. And I feel like this is going to kind of support the entire conversation we've had today around how do we build a movement that understands that local voices really matter in the work that we do. And how do we broaden this work so that it's not just, yes, we are funding refugee-led organizations and local organizations, but they are informing practice for early childhood development, and yet this is the foundation for human life, and that matters a lot. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lydia. I want to ask Stella first, and just after the direct funding that LABE received, what were the benefits that you saw that helped you to support the local and refugee children better?
Of course, with the increased and direct funding, we were able to gain confidence in terms of our programming. And in LABE, we have have our model, which we call family basic education, and we use the approach of home-based ECD. So we provide ECD in the rural communities. As you know, Lydia and I come from Uganda, and Uganda, ECD is not their business. ECD is under the hands of private providers. And these private providers go where they know they are going to invest and get money back. So majority of our children that are eligible for ECD are in rural communities. And the private providers are only reaching about 20%, which is located within the city and the urban centers. But then a bigger percentage of the children, who are about 80%, live in rural communities and hard to reach. And no investor will go to the rural community to construct a school well knowing that people will not be able to pay. Nobody, because majority are living in poverty-stricken homes, and therefore their parents cannot afford to support them. So what LABE did, with increased support from the donors, were able to come up with a non-formal home-based ECD provision. This is a low-cost provision. It's owned by people and is located in the rural communities. So we work with parents to create home safe spaces, which we call home learning centers. When you come to Uganda and you talk about home learning centers, everyone would say that's LABE. So as LABE, we have come up with a home learning centers, and these are safe spaces located within the community. And we work with parents because at LABE, a home is an entry point for us to reach out to the children. So we have created home learning centers where we are getting children who are 3 to 5, where they come to learn. And again, LABE uses a 3-strand approach to delivering early childhood. We use a caregiver-led. This is where we train the caregiver in the pedagogy of training children who are 3 to 5 through play. Learning is fun, and then they are prepared to transit to primary school when they are school ready. As we were starting, we also came up with a non-formal learning framework. In Uganda, we have a national learning framework, but this one caters for formal settings, but yet for us we are working in rural communities where the setting has to be non-formal. So we worked with the National Curriculum Development Center and Ministry of Education to come up what we call a complementary learning framework. And from there we're able to also develop materials. So we have a ECD toolkit, which we equip the caregiver to be able to deliver learning in the learning center. But then we also have another strand, which is child-child. What we picked from child-child, where Tricia worked sometime back in UK. So we use a peer-led approach where we work with children who are 8, 9, 10 old years to support children who are 5 years, who are left with 1 year to transit to primary 1. And this one happens over the weekend for about 45 minutes. Learning is through play. Then we also have parent-led. Parent-led, this one we came up with it during the lockdown when schools were locked and no children were not to access school. So we supported parents to be able to deliver learning to their children. That is one-on-one. As a parent is sorting beans, the child is in the armpits, but also counting beans here, telling the colors and sorting. So we have caregiver-led, peer-led, that is the child-child, and also the parent-led. These are the 3 strands we are using to support children to be able to transit from home to primary school when they are school ready. So this is happening in the non-formal settings. Learning is about 3 days a week and for about 2 hours. It doesn't run from Monday to Friday. Again, it is learning is through local language. So we promote indigenous language, we promote indigenous knowledge, we promote play. And that's what LABE is doing in the 6 districts of northern Uganda and West Nile. These districts, some are refugee hosting and others are non-refugee hosting. That's what LABE is doing.
Amazing. And we're glad that the direct funding has unlocked all of these amazing initiatives. So we have 1 minute left. I want to go quickly around the panel. what is your top recommendation to other INGOs who are growing, like AMNA, who are looking to support local ECD solutions?
For partners that are transiting from intermediate to direct, my advice that be transparent, use donor money transparently, add value for money, and get to know what you're doing. If you're an ED, don't just sit in the office, get to go to the community, appreciate what is going on so that the donors can build confidence. So you have to gain donor confidence. Once you have the donor confidence, the sky is no longer the limit.
Thank you. Yeah.
Same question?
Yeah. Top recommendation. We're just having 1 minute.
Recommendation.
Yeah.
If you really want to build sustainable community kind of resourcing centered around ECD and everything else communities need, it's about collaboration. Build meaningful communities of practice where communities can work together, can support each other, can sustain the learning, and like a wise colleague said earlier, beyond the funding, that will keep the kind of resources and the belief in what you're doing flourishing. And whole family approaches work with caregivers and siblings as well as children.
Thank you. Cassie.
Yeah, just on top of collaboration, I would mention mutual partnership. Is also key, but also adapt to local context and innovate for accessibility is also key in this context. I mean, I think I have no time to elaborate more,
but we will have Q&A.
Very quickly, I think we should go to the basics again. I mean, when did you use the Convention of the Rights of the Child? Last time you used that as the reference to your work. I think that was very far away. So I guess we should go back to the basics of the Convention of the Rights of the Child, the social justice, equity, these things that we are forgetting about, and it's being dismantled these days. This is first. Second, I think we should start talking about contextualization rather than localization. Contextualization is not only geography, okay? And contextualization is more of content and building a critical mass. When an international NGO goes and have partnership with one NGO in any country, you are defying the purpose of getting people together. Building a critical mass is very important, I think.
Yeah.
The last is start regionalize.
Yeah.
Start regionalize. It's not international, global, local. It's not like that. Start regionalize. Again, this morning talked very well about the issue of Africa, and I think this is important. So,
thank you, Dr. Ghassan.
Basics. Contextualization, regionalization.
Thank you so much. And the last recommendation from Hilton.
I think it's to build trust. Financing local organizations, even government, comes with building trust. And that can be a hard place to start, but it's actually possible. There are very many labs, very many CASIs out there, very interested in the needs of their communities, and they just need to be trusted to be able to champion these efforts. And I think once we build trust, then we are able to also be flexible with our funding processes. And I know that that will take time, but as time goes on, slowly by slowly, you start to break down and make it flexible, make it participatory, and ensure meaningful participation of the partners that really understand the needs of their communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, dear panelists. You are all amazing. Please put your hands together for them. Thank you so much. And we have very limited time, 5 minutes for question. Maybe one of the microphones. We have 2 questions here.
Thank you all so much. And I think you painted a vivid picture of the world that we want to see through these diverse perspectives. I think taking advantage of that you're in the hot seat and building upon Nour's question, I wanted to ask you, what recommendations would you have for MMA in terms of an advocacy impact network that would enable you to do more of this great work? Thanks.
Let's take a couple more questions.
Thank you very much for your, beautiful conversation. This is not question, but I have a reflection, especially on the, Dr. Ghassan, you mentioned in the ECD, based on in different country or different context, in different sector. That is the very, burning issue. As a ECD professional, / 24 years I'm working in the field, and we have also seen that where this ECD will be, fit in, that the, main question. Sometimes, after birth, even from the conception, like health ministry is doing, but what about the stimulation? Then the, education ministry, in my country also, there is a leading ministry, children or women affairs, but there are other 18 ministries connected. There should be a coordination ministry who can, coordinate all this. Otherwise, we are hearing that ECD is a complicated area. That is so sad for us to hear that. That's why from this forum, actually, how we can, make a common voice that ECD should be very early. We are talking about the children. What about the age of these children? Definitely from the conception. So particularly in the humanitarian context, that is so important. Mainstream land, children, they are getting so many opportunities. But in the humanitarian context or any like this context, that is so important to give emphasis on the very young children. That's a reflection. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Mine is just a short, brief one. I wish to say that I'm speaking from the perspective of refugee-led organizations. Most refugee-led organizations were not started by professionals. They were started by people who have passion to fill gaps within the community where they live. And you are the... More important than professionals. Okay. Thank you, Doctor. So now I want to say that you have availed yourself, you have put yourself at risk to be trusted by those who give you money to give it to us. And we give account back to you. And if we go by what Stella said, when they moved on to when they were able to be funded directly, now they were able to bring in people like professionals in the area of finance, in M&E. So now, sometimes these people who give you this money to fund us, they want professional documents to be done by us. And we don't have the financial logistics to keep these people working in our organizations in order to give you the documents that you can give to those who have trusted you. So now my question is, how do you intend to bridge this gap? Because these people who are professionally trained, actually they went to school to acquire the knowledge they have. Not all of them are prepared to work for free or work just for transport. So how do you intend to bridge this gap so much so that we can have this, when you fund us, we can be able to have those who have this professional touch that can give you what you need to be able to to satisfy those who trusted you so that they can continue the funding process. Thank you.
Okay.
I have also a question.
Yeah?
How could these other refugee-led organizations, because I believe there are various of them in number that have not yet also got neither the transformative funding, the intermediate funding, or the direct funding.
Yeah.
So they are still left. How could they also do in order to also be considered?
Okay.
Last question.
Yeah, one last question.
I realize you can't answer all these questions, so
yeah.
But forgive me. I think there was sort of touched upon both by Lydia and by Stella in the sense of the ECD sector has been often privately run. In many countries, we see progress, but it still is, and it's also fragmented a lot in the sense of quality. And we want to encourage the governments also to take responsibility and to take some quality assurance responsibility, at least. So I guess I'm sort of wondering how do we link these sort of locally led solutions up with the government's accountability function in the sense of quality assurance mechanisms? And you sort of touched upon it a bit, Lydia, but it was, and I think that was also a little bit alert to from your comment in the sense of how do we put this together? You mentioned sort of also trying to have sort of a common ground around the approaches that we apply.
Yeah. Okay. We can't take any more questions, unfortunately. Lydia, would you like to answer the last question, if you can?
Camila. Well, I think we are seeing a transition in some of our countries whereby, yes, we have, like Stella said, we have had a privately owned ECCE sector, but we've had very many advocacy moments again at the same time. And so for me, it's how we build upon those moments to support and work with government to see the other side of things. So to give an example, in Uganda, we have the ECCE policy approved. Divya, just to say, I think you left that still in waiting for cabinet approval. We see a lot of energy now from government on this approved policy. But we have these partners, for instance, that Hilton is funding, and they're doing early learning in their different communities. How do we build that community to be a supporting a community of practice that government can utilize to really understand and break down what implementation of that policy means? But I think we also have opportunity within so many other partners, like in the country and other countries. Like if I'm to take an example of Ethiopia, we see a whole movement with the Addis, with the city in Ethiopia on government taking leadership. And so how we continue to build a collective agenda from the partners to be able to, first of all, keep government accountable, bring in other partners who, when they speak, immediately government respects. So for instance, we have UNICEF, we have Plan, we have World Bank, organizations that are known to work directly with government, and some organizations that are very good at advocacy. So I feel like we are at this place where we need to identify our different areas of strength and use that to push this forward, but also show government that it's possible, because we see that there's an entry point for even government to say we will support in some areas. And if I'm to just speak that in line with the question about MMA, I think for me, this is my first time to attend a meeting. I was overwhelmed by the wealth of knowledge and expertise in the room. There are people here who are giants for me, whose shoulders we are standing on, that have been doing ECD all their life. And I'm just wondering that even as MMA opens up this space for local organizations and refugee-led organizations, I think it was Elena who talked about the advocacy agenda. What does that advocacy agenda look like in terms of the strength in the room? I think before lunch, we were talking about INGOs having so many resources. Like they have so many toolkits, approaches, research, a lot of evidence that has been built. Now, how does that go to the local organizations? How does that inform practice in the different countries? And how do we keep this going? How do we talk more often? How do we connect in a way that really gets us to deep dive into our work and see how to build this movement further? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lydia. 2 minutes. So I'm having eyes from our steering committee members. She also wanted to ask about, to answer the question about what MMA should do as well. Quickly, please.
Very quickly. I think, really building on what Lydia's just said, building on what Dagan Ali challenged us to do this morning, we have an amazing opportunity. There are the stakeholders that we need in this. As Tricia said, we're a kind of representation in many ways of all our actors that exist in the system. And if we really align around some objectives that about change that we want to see, then we can really drive something forward. We have to be very clear, and then we have to put that into practice. Dr. Hassan and I and others in a separate forum were talking about the nurturing care framework. And there's so many actors here who have a specialism within that. There's philanthropy, there's funders, there's all the different actors, there's advocacy. So if we picked a context and we really thought, how do we meaningfully work together? How do we find the connective tissue between our expertise to really to drive change, locally led, co-created in that context, we could create some very powerful examples in practice that then could create evidence for an alternative, reimagined humanitarian system.
Thank you so much. Just one last reflection from Cassie. I think you are best placed to answer the RLOs on bridging the gaps. Like if an RLO that have never had funding before, what can they do? How can they be eligible for funding, let's say from Cohere?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that question has kept coming, and it's also a challenge to us as Cohere. As I speak now, on my table, I have over 120 RLOs that are seeking support from Cohere. And that, the support that they want is not all about funding, but they want that capacity how do we help them be able to even develop documents that help them be able to even mobilize their resources, be trusted people? And that's something that I wanted to even suggest to even some of our co-implementing partners within the sector. How do we be a tool to these RLOs for them to be able to utilize us to the extent that in a situation we can't give them money, we can't give them funding, but we can support them to be the right people to channel the right responses to the issues that they are facing within their community. During our Saving Brain, the last time Saving Brain conference, we talked about reimagining the role of INGOs within the sector. Should INGOs keep on saying we want to bring food, we want to go for mobilization, we want to go for 1, 2, 3, 4. But if that's the case, where is sustainability? Where do we bring in these other initiatives that are coming up again? So our mandate as COHEA is to ensure we are capacity strengthening RLOs. We give them a bit of funding. Of course, there's a bit of coordination, networking, and advocacy. And that is where and this is not done only in Kenya. It's done, of course, thanks to LEGO. They supported us be able to even expand to other countries and ensure that we are able to also support the RLOs within those areas.
Yeah, thank you so much, Cassie. Yeah, we're at time. I'm just going to try to wrap up some of the highlights from our panel. We've heard how many different types of organizations are supporting locally led ECD solutions, including direct funding, accessible funding, flexible funding, not telling people where to fund, including research building, knowledge building, capacity strengthening. And we saw the impact that it has on LLOs to have the freedom and flexibility to design very contextual programs for the parents and children in the specific contexts that are not funded, like rural areas. We saw also the challenges, internal challenges, external challenges, the challenges of not having recognitions as refugee-led organizations or local organizations, affecting their access to funding and other capacity opportunities. We saw also the great benefits that it has on the regional network, having the broader impact, having that regional understanding of what is ECD, what are the needs, having that unity of understanding across regions and millions of people is really, really important, and the broader impact the regional network had because of that national and local support. And we also had the unlocking new innovation in ECD in emergencies due to the meaningful refugee participation with Hilton, right? And you're seeing just so many different benefits and building an ecosystem, as they were saying. We're not only supporting one LLO here, one RLO here. Amongst all of us in MMA, we are building a new system. We are building an alternative way of thinking about ECD in emergencies, and we are building more support for refugee and locally led early childhood development. And many of the recommendations they have said, you can apply it. Please, they all agreed to talk to you more about it. You can talk to any of them in the social exchange learning. We're gonna hopefully do also tell you more about how MMA is visioning to support locally led and refugee-led ecosystems tomorrow in our action day, action planning day. And I just want to thank you all. It takes a village to raise a child, and I think you have the village here. And we have the village here as well. So yeah, thank you so much for engagement and for questions. And I want to thank our panelists. Please give them a very, very big clap. Thank you.